Mr. President, I implore you, the country implores you, cherish the trust and hope that was placed in you by virtue of your office, by never again advancing claims that you know or should know are simply not true.
That's Congressman Adam Schiff this morning, the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, scolding President Trump about his use of Twitter. Schiff is among those calling for an independent investigation into the president and Russia after his wiretapping claims fell into even more question Friday. House Intelligence Chair Devin Nunes backpedaled on his own assertion that there was evidence of surveillance against the president at Trump Tower last year. Here's what Nunes told reporters yesterday.
I've been very clear on this for many, many weeks now. There was no wiretapping of Trump Tower. That didn't happen.
That's a different tone from Nunes, a Californian Republican, compared to his comments at the White House on Wednesday.
This is information that was brought to me that I thought the president needed to know about incidental collection, where the president himself and others in the Trump transition team were clearly put into intelligence reports.
Nunes also cancelled an open hearing into Russia's election meddling. James Clapper, John Brennan and Sally Yates were set to testify. With us now, MSNBC contributor Naveed Jamali, who worked as a double agent for the FBI against Russian military intelligence. He's the author of How to Catch a Russian Spy and a senior fellow on national security at the Foreign Policy Research Institute. Naveed, I guess the question continues to be, can Nunes be a friend of the president and true to his role as chair of that important committee?
Yeah, that is a good question. And I think we have to look at this and say, look, we have to balance the obvious public appetite to know and understand what exactly happened. And frankly, the question of, did the Russians actually do something, which I think they did, and what was that thing? And more importantly, look, we understand that obviously the Russians interfered with our elections with their DNC and all the email stuff, but I think there was a second tranche, and that was to, frankly, influence and manipulate U.S. persons. And if that did in fact occur, then to me, frankly, that part of the Russian operation is still ongoing. So we have to balance sort of this call to inform the American public with, frankly, understanding the second part of that attack and obviously neutralizing it.
The fact that the Russians are doing that, you know from your own experience, is that a surprise, really, though? I mean, that's what you'd expect a foreign government like the Russians to be trying to do, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think, you know, to that point, I've often said that, you know, when it comes to Russian espionage and sort of human collection, and look, what they do is recruit spies. We do the same thing. And when you think of that, it's almost like being a traffic cop. You don't get promoted by writing less tickets. The Russians, for their part, they look at how many people they speak to, how many are recruited, and sort of this process that goes from overt legitimate meetings to then covert tasking. And the question when it comes to U.S. persons, when it comes to meeting with Manafort or Roger Stone, were those people actually tasked? And that would have been illegal. If a foreign intelligence service gives you specific tasking and says, go do this on the behest of us, that is illegal. I'm not so sure that it rose to that occasion. Again, just because they had, you know, meetings with these people doesn't mean that that is illegal on either the Russians' part or, frankly, the U.S. person's part.
Okay, so it's possible for, what you're saying is it's possible for members of Donald Trump's campaign team to have had meetings, to have interacted with Russians they know, if you like, and for that not to have been illegal. Where is the threshold in your view?
That's a great question. Look, I can speak for myself. In my case, it took the Russians almost 2 years to actually task me. And that tasking came in a very clear, they specifically asked me to collect information on a U.S. government, you know, weapon system.
Do you know you're being tasked? Sometimes, yeah. I mean, people don't always know that they're being tasked, if you like, that a foreign intelligence service sees it that way.
You know, look, respectfully, I don't think that's always the case. I think you're right. You can meet with someone, and this may be a legitimate meeting. They may come to you and say, I want to do business with you. I want to hire you, you know, as we saw with Manafort. But there's a difference between that sort of legitimate, overt meeting to someone coming to and saying to you, we want you to do this, and there's no other reason for what they're asking you other than that you're being tasked for something that purely benefits Russia. It's not, there is a very clear line, and it's a dance, and that could take years. I mean, again, in my case, it took them 2 years to get to that point. So the fact that they are meeting with these people, the fact that those meetings have now been exposed, and I'm assuming they're still not meeting with any Russians, may have ended that part of the operation. And look, it could have progressed to a certain level. So the question here is, in those meetings, were they tasked? Did it reach that level? And I don't have the answer to that question.
And members of Donald Trump's campaign are volunteering to testify. What might we hear from them? How important would those testimonies be?
It is important, but I wonder if this is a bit of showmanship that says, look, we want to be open, but clearly they're not going to admit to a crime. I mean, that would be, I'm assuming they're going to have counsel. So, I kind of wonder here. I mean, I think one of the things that we can get from this, and is, did they travel abroad? Did they in fact meet with Russians? These are really binary questions, either a yes or a no. It doesn't, again, just because you admit you met with a Russian and you say who you met with, that doesn't necessarily mean you've committed a crime. I mean, the Russians approach people all the time, and just because they do that doesn't mean it's a crime. So perhaps we'll get some of those pedestrian things answered, but I don't think we're going to get the answer to the big question, which is, was the Trump campaign colluding with Russia?
All right, still a question. Former FBI double agent Naveed Jamali, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
President Trump warning today that Obama